Have you ever tried your hardest at something only to watch it fall apart anyway? A business that failed? An exam you didn't pass? An opportunity that slipped through your hands? After a while, that quiet fear starts to grow. What if I fail again? If that feeling has ever stopped you from trying, this story is for you, because one simple conversation completely changed how a man understood failure, and it might change how you see it too. The story opens by confronting one of the most paralyzing emotions people carry in silence: the fear of failure. This fear rarely begins with a single mistake. It grows over time, shaped by failed businesses, missed opportunities, rejected applications, and moments where effort did not lead to success. Each disappointment leaves a mark, and slowly, those experiences stop feeling like events and start feeling like identity. Failure is no longer something that happened, it becomes something we believe we are. The inner voice changes from, "I failed," to, "I am not good enough." This is where fear becomes heavy. It freezes action, turns ambition into hesitation, and convinces people that trying again is more dangerous than giving up. The story speaks directly to this emotional weight, recognizing that fear does not come from weakness, but from having tried and been hurt before. It also exposes a painful social truth. Success is celebrated loudly, while failure is quietly judged. As a result, people suffer alone, believing they are uniquely broken. By addressing the listener personally, the opening reframes failure as a shared human experience rather than a personal flaw. This emotional honesty lays the foundation for everything that follows, inviting the audience to consider a powerful shift that failure is not the end of the story, but the place where a deeper understanding begins. Building on that quiet fear of failure, the story then introduces Daniel, a 27-year-old man living in a city where success seems to be everywhere, yet never within his reach. Daniel is not lazy or careless. He has ambition, ideas, and the willingness to work hard. And yet, every serious attempt he makes ends the same way: disappointment. His first small business collapses within months, taking his savings with it. His dream job slips away at the final interview stage. A second startup, built through long nights and 16-hour days, quietly fades after attracting almost no users. One failure follows another, and with each setback, something inside Daniel weakens. As friends celebrate promotions, new homes, and visible progress, Daniel feels increasingly invisible. Social media becomes a daily reminder of how far behind he believes he is. Even gentle concern from family begins to sound like doubt, suggesting that maybe he should stop chasing dreams and choose something safe. Slowly, Daniel stops seeing failure as something he experienced and starts seeing it as proof of who he is. His resume no longer feels like effort, it feels like evidence. This section reveals the true damage of repeated setbacks, not the losses themselves, but the way they reshape self-worth. Daniel's lowest point is not professional or financial. It is the moment he begins to believe he is the problem. As Daniel's self-doubt deepens, the story moves toward its emotional breaking point. One rainy evening, alone in a small coffee shop, Daniel opens yet another rejection email, this time from a company he believed was his final chance. The words are polite, professional, and painfully familiar. As he closes his laptop and stares out at the rain, something inside him gives way. Not anger, not frustration, just emptiness. This moment is important because it reveals the real danger of failure. Failure does not simply hurt, it convinces people to stop trying. For the first time, Daniel seriously considers quitting his dreams altogether. The idea of choosing a safe, predictable life feels strangely comforting. No more hope, no more disappointment. But at the same time, it feels like surrendering a part of himself he may never get back. This inner conflict captures a universal human experience, the moment when persistence feels naive and giving up feels practical. The story slows down here, allowing the weight of Daniel's exhaustion to settle. This quiet despair is not dramatic or loud, it is silent and deeply personal. And it is precisely this honesty, this willingness to admit how broken he feels, that opens the door to real transformation. Just as Daniel reaches the edge of surrender, the story introduces an unexpected presence. An older man named Robert, sitting nearby, notices Daniel's quiet collapse and speaks not with advice or sympathy, but with a question. Do you know the difference between a failure and a lesson? The simplicity of the question cuts through Daniel's despair. Robert explains that failure only exists when someone stops trying. When a person learns, adjusts, and continues, the same experience becomes a lesson. To give weight to his words, Robert shares his own history: 7 failed businesses, years of debt, ridicule from others, and moments when giving up felt logical. His authority does not come from success alone, but from surviving loss. Robert introduces a different way of thinking. Ability is not fixed, and progress is built through experimentation. Rejections become data, mistakes become feedback, disappointment becomes information. Using metaphors of prototypes, experiments, and Edison's countless attempts, Robert dismantles the myth that success is clean or linear. This conversation becomes the story's turning point. Shame begins to loosen its grip. Curiosity replaces self-blame. Failure is no longer a verdict, it is part of a process. In this moment, Daniel is no longer broken. He is simply carrying Robert's words with him. Daniel does not rush into optimism or blind confidence. Instead, he takes a quiet, practical step that changes everything. That night, he opens a notebook and begins writing down every failure he can remember, each business that collapsed, each interview rejection, each idea that never took off. But this time, he does not write to punish himself. He writes to understand. Next to every failure, he adds a second column. What did this teach me? Slowly, patterns begin to emerge. One failure reveals a lack of market research. Another exposes weak preparation. Another highlights poor communication or unrealistic expectations. As Daniel analyzes instead of relives, something unexpected happens. The emotional weight begins to lift. These experiences no longer feel like evidence of inadequacy. They feel like accumulated knowledge. Shame turns into clarity. Regret turns into strategy. Daniel realizes he has not been stuck. He has been learning without naming it. This process gives him back control, because understanding replaces helplessness. The story emphasizes a critical truth here. Experience alone does not create growth, reflection does. Without reflection, failure becomes pain. With reflection, it becomes wisdom. In reframing his past, Daniel also reshapes his future. He no longer fears failure as proof that he is not enough. He accepts it as part of experimentation. In this moment, Daniel stops being defined by what went wrong and begins to be guided by what he has learned. With this new understanding firmly in place, Daniel steps into his next attempt with a completely different mindset. Instead of rushing forward, driven by desperation, he moves deliberately, guided by what his past failures have already taught him. Before investing time or money, he now validates his ideas carefully. He listens closely to feedback, studies real user behavior, and makes small adjustments instead of dramatic changes. Progress is slow at first, 10 users, then 100, then 500. But unlike before, this growth feels steady and real. Daniel no longer judges himself by how fast results appear. He measures success by whether he is learning, improving, and moving forward. When obstacles arise, he does not interpret them as signs to quit. Instead, he asks better questions. What is this teaching me? What can I change? Rejections no longer attack his self-worth. They provide information. This shift marks a critical stage of maturity. Daniel is no longer motivated by emotional highs or crushed by setbacks. His motivation becomes disciplined and quiet. Even a brief message from Robert, later asking how the lesson collection is going, reminds him that growth never truly ends. The story makes a clear distinction here. Persistence without reflection leads to burnout, but persistence guided by learning builds momentum. Over time, that momentum turns effort into progress, and progress into lasting results. With Daniel now moving forward in clarity rather than fear, the story gently shifts its focus away from him and turns directly toward the listener. At this point, Daniel's journey is no longer just a personal transformation. It becomes a mirror for anyone who has ever been afraid to try again. The final message is clear and liberating. Failure is not a verdict on who you are, but a step in the process of becoming who you are meant to be. What we often call failure is simply feedback, information pointing us closer to what works. The story challenges the audience to change the language they use with themselves. Replace "I failed" with "I learned." Replace "I'm not good enough" with "I'm not there yet." By reframing setbacks as experiments, the listener is invited to step out of shame and into curiosity. References to figures like Thomas Edison, James Dyson, and J.K. Rowling reinforce a universal truth. Greatness is rarely born from perfect beginnings, but from repeated attempts guided by learning. The story closes with a calm but powerful reminder. You are not broken, you are not behind, and you are not finished. As long as you are learning, growth is inevitable. Failure is not the end of your story, it is how the story continues forward. This is the end of the video. Thank you very much for listening. See you again in the next video. Please like and comment to subscribe to the channel, to support the channel, to produce better videos.